I never understood why my husband, Daniel, was so secretive about that one room in our house. It was always locked, and every time I asked him about it, his eyes would flash with a kind of stubborn intensity that made me stop in my tracks. "It's nothing, Sarah," he would say, his voice calm but firm. "Just a room I need for myself." At first, I respected his privacy. Marriage, I thought, was about trust, but also about giving each other space. I didn't pry. I tried to focus on our life together. We had been married for 12 years, built a beautiful home in a quiet suburb, and shared dreams of traveling once the kids grew up. Life seemed perfect on the surface. But there was always that nagging feeling, like a shadow lingering in the corner of my mind, that something was hidden from me. Daniel was kind, attentive, and loving, but I noticed subtle shifts in his behavior. He would disappear for hours in the evenings, often muttering on the phone in hushed tones. Sometimes he'd come home looking tense, and I'd ask, worried, "Is everything okay?" He'd just smile, shake his head, and leave it at that. My heart ached with a quiet suspicion, but I buried it. Maybe I was imagining things. One rainy evening, the tension reached its peak. I had been cleaning the house when I heard the soft click of the locked door in the study. Daniel wasn't home yet. My curiosity got the better of me. I approached the door and pressed my hand against it. It was cool, solid, and behind it, I could hear the faintest sound of someone moving. My mind raced, imagining all sorts of possibilities, a secret hobby, an old project, maybe even something darker. When Daniel came home, I confronted him. "Daniel, why won't you ever let me in that room? We're married. We share everything, right?" He froze, his eyes narrowing slightly. There was a pause that felt like an eternity. Then he stepped closer and took my hands in his. "Sarah, I need you to trust me. Whatever is in there, it's not for you. It's not something anyone else should see." "But why? Why would you hide something from me?" I asked, my voice shaking. He sighed, his shoulders slumping. "Some things are just mine, Sarah. Please, don't push me on this." I wanted to argue, to demand answers, but the plea in his voice disarmed me. I let it go, for now. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel's health started to decline. It wasn't sudden, it was subtle, the slow, relentless creep of something I couldn't name. He became quieter, more withdrawn. Spending hours in that locked room. I worried, but again, I respected his privacy. Then came the night he passed away. It was sudden and peaceful, as if he had simply drifted off in his sleep. I was devastated, consumed by grief, and yet there it was again, that nagging thought about the locked door. The one place in our home I had never entered. The days after the funeral were a blur of condolences and arrangements. Friends whispered, children cried, and I moved through the motions like a ghost. But every time I passed the study, my gaze lingered on the locked door. The room that Daniel had fiercely guarded. One evening, when the house was quiet and I was alone, I found myself standing in front of it. My fingers trembled as I traced the edge of the keyhole. I could almost hear Daniel's voice warning me, almost feel his presence. My heart pounded with fear, guilt, and an undeniable curiosity. What had he been hiding? Why had he kept it from me? I hesitated, taking a deep breath. And then, trembling, I inserted the key he had left in his desk, the one I had found the day after his passing. The lock clicked, the door swung open, and a cold, musty air met me. What I saw inside stopped me in my tracks. The room was ordinary, at first glance. Bookshelves lined the walls, papers scattered across a desk, a small trunk in the corner. But then I noticed the photographs. Hundreds of them. Pictures of people I didn't know, but they looked familiar. There were children, families, people in distress. And alongside each photo, there were letters, notes, detailed records. My eyes widened as I realized what this room was, a sanctuary of secrets, but not just any secrets. Daniel had been helping people in ways I could never have imagined. There were notes about families in crisis, letters of gratitude, and detailed plans of aid. Daniel, my husband, had been living a double life, not for himself, but for others. He had been saving people, quietly and anonymously, protecting them from dangers I couldn't even comprehend. Tears streamed down my face as I sank to the floor. I felt a mix of grief and awe, guilt and love. I had been blind to his sacrifices, yet here was proof of the life he had led in secret, a life dedicated to helping others at great personal cost. I whispered to myself, choking back sobs, "Daniel, why didn't you tell me?" The more I explored, the more I realized the depth of his hidden world. There were letters addressed to me that he had never sent, explaining his fears, his hopes, his love, and his insistence that I respect his privacy. My heart ached with the weight of his trust and the enormity of what he had carried alone. I couldn't help but think about all the times I had doubted him, all the moments I had felt distant, and now, the truth hit me like a tidal wave. I had loved a man whose heart was bigger than I had ever known, whose courage and selflessness had shaped a hidden legacy. And in that moment, surrounded by the artifacts of his secret life, I made a silent promise to honor him, to continue what he had started, to let his sacrifices live on. If this story has touched you, if you're feeling the weight of love and loss, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Stay with me and hit that subscribe button for the next chapter. You won't want to miss what comes next. The days after discovering Daniel's secret room felt surreal. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat properly. My mind was a storm of emotions, grief, wonder, guilt, and an unshakable curiosity. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the photographs and letters, the countless people he had helped quietly, invisibly. I realized I had married a man who was more extraordinary than I had ever known. I began to explore the room methodically. Each photograph had a corresponding letter or file. Names, addresses, life stories, pleas for help. Daniel had meticulously documented every detail. My hands trembled as I read the letters, each one a testament to his compassion. One letter, dated 10 years ago, was addressed to a single mother who had been threatened by an abusive ex-husband. He had arranged her escape, helped her find a new home, and even ensured her children could attend a safe school. He had never asked for recognition or gratitude, he had just acted. I could hardly comprehend the scope of his work. Over the years, he had helped dozens, maybe hundreds of people. Families in danger, victims of fraud, individuals on the brink of despair. And he had done it all while maintaining the appearance of a quiet, devoted husband. My heart ached with both pride and regret, pride in his courage, regret in not knowing sooner, in never being a part of this side of his life. One evening, I sat cross-legged on the floor, letters strewn around me, and I whispered into the empty room, "Daniel, why didn't you trust me with this? We could have done so much together." My voice cracked, and I buried my face in my hands. As I continued reading, I found something that made my breath catch, a stack of letters addressed to me, letters he had never sent. They were written during the last 5 years of his life. The first one started simply, "Sarah, I wish I could show you this world, but I fear it would endanger you. Please trust me. Everything I do for others, and I hope you will understand one day. I love you more than words can capture." The letters grew more personal, filled with reflections, confessions, and pleas for forgiveness. He had known he was becoming weaker, that his time might be limited, and yet he chose to shield me from this secret burden. Every word struck me like a lightning bolt. I felt the depth of his love and the weight of the life he had carried alone. One letter, dated a month before his death, made me cry openly. It read, "If you find this, Sarah, it means I am gone. Please don't feel angry or betrayed. I wanted to keep you safe, to keep your world untouched by the darkness I've carried. But I trust you now. I hope you can carry forward what I've started, help where you can, and honor those who cannot speak for themselves. You are stronger than you know. You always were my heart." I clutched the letter to my chest, tears streaming down my face. I had spent years thinking I knew Daniel completely, and yet here was a part of him that had been a universe away from my understanding. The grief I felt for his death was now tangled with awe and a sense of responsibility I had never anticipated. The following week, I began to reach out. There were names and contact details in his files, people who had been helped, some who might still need guidance. I called, wrote emails, and in each interaction, I felt Daniel's presence guiding me. Some remembered him, some had no idea who I was, but every story reaffirmed what I had discovered. my husband had lived for others. One day, I came across a file that made my heart race, a series of photographs of a child, maybe 10 years old, living in a cramped apartment. The letters indicated that Daniel had been investigating a case of abuse and neglect, trying to find the child a safer home. But the last update in his file was months old. I felt a pang of fear. Had he been unable to finish his mission? Was the child still in danger? I couldn't ignore it. I reached out to a local social worker listed in the file and explained the situation. Her response was chilling. Yes, Daniel was working on that case, and unfortunately, the child was still in a vulnerable situation. We've been struggling to keep up with the needs. That night, I sat alone in Daniel's study, staring at the photographs and files. My hands shook. I whispered, "I'll finish this, Daniel. I promise." For the first time, the weight of his secrecy didn't feel like betrayal, it felt like a calling. A responsibility to carry forward the light he had quietly cast in a world so often dark. And yet, with each revelation, a new layer of mystery unfolded. There were files marked with strange symbols, notes in code, references to people I didn't recognize. Some files were locked in drawers, and even though Daniel was gone, I felt a shiver of unease. What had he been protecting? Who had he been afraid of? My curiosity, mingled with fear, grew. I remembered Daniel's repeated warnings, his insistence that some things were not for me to know. And now, alone, I felt the weight of his caution pressing down on me. But I also felt a surge of courage. If Daniel could face dangers, threats, and secrecy to protect others, then I could face the unknown. That night, I made another discovery, a small box tucked beneath the desk. Inside, there were old photographs of Daniel in places I had never been, with people whose faces were familiar yet foreign. And there, in the corner of the box, was a small key, unlike any I had seen before. A key with no indication of what it opened. My pulse quickened. I knew that whatever lay beyond that key was part of Daniel's secret life, a part even more hidden, more dangerous. But I couldn't resist. I felt a strange mix of fear and determination. Daniel had trusted me, in his last letter, to take up this mantle. Could I uncover the truth he had kept hidden all these years? I held the key tightly, whispering, "I'll find out, Daniel. I'll honor you. And I'll make sure the world knows the good you did." Even as I resolved this, I knew my journey had just begun. I didn't yet understand the dangers, the secrets, or the shadows that Daniel had faced. But for the first time, I felt a connection to him stronger than life or death. I was walking into his world, a world he had built alone, a world now entrusted to me. If this part touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe, it helps a lot. And stay with me for the next chapter, because the secrets Daniel left behind are about to test me in ways I never imagined. The following morning, I awoke with a restless energy I hadn't felt in years. Daniel's secret room had already changed me, showed me a side of him I hadn't known, and in doing so, opened a door within myself. That small, mysterious key burned in my palm like a silent promise, urging me forward. I spent the early hours of the day preparing myself mentally. I had no idea what I would find, but I knew that Daniel had trusted me with his legacy, and I refused to let fear dictate my next step. As I approached the drawer where I had found the key, I felt a strange pull, a mixture of dread and determination. My fingers trembled as I inserted the key into the lock, the metal cold against my skin. With a slow click, the drawer opened. Inside was a notebook, its leather cover worn, edges frayed. I opened it, and the words inside were Daniel's handwriting, familiar yet strangely foreign now, as if he had been speaking to me from beyond the grave. The first page read, "If you are reading this, Sarah, it means you have found the key. This key opens the cabinet in the basement. I must warn you, what lies there is not only my secret, but a truth that could change everything you think you know about me. Proceed with courage." My heart pounded. The basement. Daniel had never let me go there alone. I walked cautiously, each step echoing in the silent hallway, the weight of the unknown pressing on me. I reached the basement door and hesitated. I could feel Daniel's presence in that moment, as though he were standing just behind me, whispering encouragement and warning in the same breath. With a trembling hand, I inserted the key into the basement lock. It turned smoothly, as if waiting for me. The door creaked open, revealing a room bathed in dim light. At first glance, it looked like a storage space, boxes stacked against the walls, old furniture, and shelves lined with files. But then my eyes caught something that made my breath hitch, a wall covered in photographs and maps, with strings connecting names, places, and dates like some intricate web. Daniel's secret wasn't just about helping people. It was far larger, far more complex. He had been investigating a network of people in danger, people being exploited, and individuals who had been wronged but had no voice. There were photographs of politicians, businessmen, and figures I recognized from the news, but the connections he had drawn between them were hidden, intricate, and dangerous. I sank to the floor, absorbing it all. My mind spun with disbelief. Daniel had been protecting countless lives, but he had also been uncovering truths that could ruin lives, even endanger his own. And in the midst of all this, he had kept me completely in the dark, not out of mistrust, but out of love. He had feared for me, feared my safety in a world I didn't understand. As I pored over the files, I found a series of letters with addresses and instructions. People who needed help, who had nowhere to turn. And then, tucked at the very bottom of a drawer, was a letter addressed to me in his familiar handwriting, dated just days before his death. Sarah, if you are reading this, I am gone. I had hoped to teach you slowly, to show you my world over time. But now it is your world, too. You must be careful. You must be smart. And above all, you must continue the work. There is danger, yes, but there is also hope. You have the courage to do this. I know you do. Tears blurred my vision as I clutched the letter. Daniel had trusted me, believed in me, and now the weight of his legacy rested on my shoulders. The room, the photographs, the files, they were not just a record of his life. They were a roadmap, a mission, and a call to action. That night, I sat in the basement for hours, reading, organizing, planning. I knew I could not turn back. Daniel's secret had become my purpose. Every life he had touched, every secret he had guarded, it was all entrusted to me now. I felt fear, yes, but also a sense of connection, of love, and a quiet resolve. Over the next few weeks, I began to reach out to the people Daniel had helped, the ones still in danger, the ones who needed support. It was overwhelming, and yet empowering. Each time I assisted someone, I felt him beside me, guiding me, silently cheering me on. His love had not ended with his death, it